And gentlemen, is there a prospect of relaxation looming on the horizon? It's Friday.
No, ma.
No, ma. No rest for the wicked, they say. You'll be still at post working hard, I see.
This thing.
Yes. We're recapping the happenings of the week. And of course, the most notable happening being what we're calling the military invasion. Are we phrasing that right when we say military invasion of a
Yeah, it's an invasion.
I think we're being charitable with what happened.
You think that we've been measured in how we
I think so.
Yeah, it was an invasion.
So. They were not measured. So, well, there was a headline I saw: the military go haywire in Ashaiman.
Yeah.
Are they wrong to use? Maybe they going haywire. I think we're being really measured in what the military did. We should find tougher words to describe the lack of intelligence-led operation that the military conducted in Ashaiman that led to the arrest of some 180 more, and about 34 are still in the custody, have not been released yet. Nobody has been charged. They've not gone to court. I mean, what laws are we using in this country to do what we're doing to the people of Ashaiman? They are also Ghanaians. Granted that something untoward happened there, but is that the levels of high-handedness that we should mete out to them in such situations? I think it's bad like that.
And for me, what's worrying is the statements that I've heard some people make, that it was like that because it was Ashaiman. You know, and over the years, we've marked some communities as, you know, violent communities, if you like. Those days used to be, Nima, then we have Katsua, we have Ashaiman.
That's right.
So whatever it is that make us, you know, tag those communities as violent, I think we should look at the social aspect of the whole discussion.
Yeah. That's right.
Because these are very congested areas. They lack social amenities. There are a lot of young people who have no jobs, and so on and so forth. So crime will always find idle hands. And that's why those days, if anybody wanted to do anything unruly, they'll go into those communities and, if you like, recruit young people to engage in those kind of illegal, or if you like, unlawful activities. Having said that, it is not the military's job, it is not the military's duty, it is not the military's call to lead investigations into homicide.
Yeah.
It is not done anywhere in the world, unless it's a military dictatorship where there's no police force.
Unless the police request for
it. And there's no police force or police service. But even when Ghana was being, you know, ruled by soldiers, the Ghana police service was still around. And at the end of the day, if we allow the military to come in this way, the way they are trained, their training does not allow them to do the civil interactions that the police would do.
Yeah.
Because when they come, we're here when they started using words like neutralizing the situation. And up to now, we've been trying to find out exactly what it means. And what I got from the discussion in the past week or two, when the Boku incident happened, was that they neutralize any opposition, anyway, anyhow. And when they are moving, and you come and cross them, they will neutralize you, either, you know, immobilize you, disarm you, kill you. That's how they neutralize individuals.
That's
groups
the
of
definition
people.
of neutralizing.
Yes. So for a group of people who are trained like this, whose activities are run like this, if we allow them into the civil space, people will lose their lives even before we investigate in a matter, because they are called to neutralize.
Right.
And that's why I like the scenario created by the venerable old soldier, Dr. Nahuta Maklo, yesterday, when he said the whole thing could be likened to the execution of a coup d'etat.
Right.
Because the individuals in the area were asleep, 4 o'clock, 4:30, thereabout. There's a military chopper in the air. There are tanks on the ground. There are buses on the ground. There are boots on the ground. That's more like an invasion. That's more like a military takeover.
Right.
That's more like an activity or an exercise to overthrow a certain power. But that was not the intelligence-led operation that they told us they were going to do. If you have intelligence, and I know soldiers, they do what they call recce.
Yeah.
They go to the ground, they go and fish for some information here. So when they are moving towards a certain target. We were here in this country when we heard and we saw on TV how the Americans picked the dreaded Osama bin Laden like a snail from under how do you call it, under a cocoa tree. Easy. When the man was actually watching some movies when they got to his room, you know.
So the recce had been done,
Yes,
the target identified, the operation carried out smoothly.
They were like needle sharp.
Right.
They went and picked the man like snails from under the cocoa tree. Easy. So if our military, the military high command and the soldiers are telling us that was an intelligence-led operation, what kind of intelligence?
This clearly was not an intelligence-led operation.
It was just to show them small
just to flex your muscles.
Yeah, but
soldier for
especially because we're being told by the defense minister, for example, citizens should respect men and women in uniform. So we'll have to assert, if you will, dominance and to reiterate that they are men and women in uniform and they must be respected. I think we can all agree that was the ethos of this. Well, Oliver Appiah-Ampofo joins the many who are asking those who wish to seek some type of redress to come forward. He put this on social media yesterday. We'll also talk about what Amnesty International is saying to weigh in on the conversation. And we'll hear some accounts from those who have been affected by said brutalities. But Oliver Appiah-Ampofo, by way of Facebook, I believe it was, said, "Good evening. All the remaining 34 people have been released this night after this apparent intelligence-led operation. No criminal charges against anyone. Still, we are receiving reports of missing and unaccounted for people. The initial statement from the military claimed that there were about 184 persons detained. What do they mean by about? Distraught families need answers. Don't move on, Ghana media. Don't move on as usual." Well, in the spirit of not moving on, let's just hear from some accounts of those who were there on the ground, who were picked up and also subjected to beatings and all forms of abuse. And then we'll come back and then think about the way forward. What are some of the options that persons and institutions are offering these people who were subjected to these brutalities?
Hours of Tuesday, March 7, 2023, in the military swoop at Ashaman. He was not among the lucky ones who were set free on the same day.
They beat us and they took us from here to Michelle camp. We went there for a while. That place they didn't beat us. We went there for a while. Then they transferred us to Bema camp. In the Bema camp, we passed through some drill. And after that, they brought us back to drop us at Runabout.
He was taken away by the military after receiving severe beatings for a crime he did not commit. He said together with his colleagues, they were not provided with food.
They didn't give us Gary. So they didn't even give us. But that place, they didn't bring us food like this food we should take. But I heard that if you are hungry, there's Gary over here. And everybody too is scared. Maybe you say you're hungry, they'll go there, they'll beat.
Bright Daklu, 26, is a sickle cell patient and one of the victims of Tuesday's dawn brutalities.
I left my dad because he was older. So they left my dad and they brought me to there's a chapel here. So that was when they started beating us. So when we were done, they took us to Michelle camp. But when we were going, there was a necklace on my neck. One of them grabbed it and then pulled it off. Just so I couldn't find it. My phone, some few things on me, I couldn't find them again. We got to Michelle camp and then I have this medical condition, rheumatism. So it kicked in the camp and then they took me to the hospital.
He was left alone after he was taken to the hospital by the soldiers.
Well, I was in pain, a lot of pain. I couldn't move my arms and my feet. So I was just lying on the floor and they just took me along. After some few checkup and some drips, they left us at the entrance. As to whether we had money to go get home or not, they just left us there and said we should go.
According to the assemblyman of the Ashaman Municipal Assembly, Ni Ayiku Kabute, they will head to court if the victims are not compensated.
But we will not leave this matter to die. We'll go to court. Yes, we'll go to court. I mentioned the lawyer. The lawyer's view of the house is where they park their MOACs. And MOACs are not meant for war. But you see about 6 or 7 MOWACs in Ashaiman.
He condemned the actions by the military personnel deployed to the area and further urged the police to speed up investigations. In all, 184 people were whisked away to Burma camp. 34 victims are yet to be released. Godwin Asideba, TV3 News.
And that was a report by our colleague Godwin Asideba. We have on the telephone lines Oliver Bakavomowo. He's a lawyer and also the convener of the Fix the Country movement. Oliver, good morning to you.
Helen, good morning. I hope you're doing well.
I'm doing great. How are you this morning?
A bit relieved, but also a sense of duty, I think. There's still a lot more to do. We've been able to secure the release of 184 people. But there's still a lot of stories of tragedies in these communities. There's still a report of persons who are unaccounted for that we need to be able to confirm whether they were also picked up by the military. Because if you remember correctly, the military statement said they had about 184 persons.
That's right. You say the language is vague.
Yeah, the language is pretty vague. And the fact that we're continuing to receive reports of unaccounted for persons means that we need to continue to investigate whether those people are still being held by the military.
Right.
But you know, this is a trauma that has hit the community, and persons are still reeling from it. I think we have the task now of trying to document these experiences for posterity, but also for various human rights organizations, both domestically and internationally, before we start to reckon with the fact of how do we make these individuals whole. So a lot to do still.
Now, you put on Facebook, you mentioned the 34 remaining people who have been released, and I'm sure that's a big source of relief for you. You talk about other persons who might not be accounted for at this time, but you also end that statement about not moving on. You say the media should not move on as usual. Is that a fear for you that this will become a story that is in our rear view mirror as opposed to being front and center?
It's a big source of fear and concern, to be honest. And I understand sometimes it's not malicious, that there's a lot of competing stories on the media's vistas or agenda that they have to be able to address. But the nature of what has happened, and I promise you, in other democracies, this would lead to congressional hearings and all kinds of hearings, and would have day-to-day reportage on this till we get to the bottom of how this happened and what the solutions are. Our ability to make this information stay, our ability to be able to drive persons in authority to understand the severity of what has happened and the urgency of finding responses that heal not only a community but the entire nation and provide measures for us to be able to say confidently that never again, strongly depends on how the media treats this and continues to hold and generate conversations on this. There's so many, there's over 1,000 persons who have been affected by this.
You say over 1,000 persons?
Sorry.
Oliver, you say over 1,000 persons have been affected by this?
Yes, over 1,000 persons. Mind you, there weren't only those people who were arrested. There were persons who were made to drink, to eat cow dung, drink water from gutters, who were ultimately released and not arrested. There were persons who just passing by were brutalized and left. There are persons who were sleeping in their homes and the military broke down their homes. So there's a lot of people whose lives have been affected by this. And if any narrow focus on the 184 would be depreciating, the full scale of what has happened. So I do hope that these individuals get to be able to tell their stories, that we truly and properly document these experiences for tomorrow's sake.
And there are people that were on their way to work, maybe those that had a flight to catch and so on and so forth, whose day would have been disrupted by the happenings in Ashaiman. So when you say thousands of people, I guess that puts into context what it is that you mean. But we're hearing from the defense minister that we need to be more respectful of men and women in uniform. How does that feature in this conversation? This talk about respect for men and women in uniform, a lack of respect and a need for more respect. What do you make of this angle?
It's a surprising way in which the conversation has turned, and I am actually appalled and even let me say more disappointed by the lack of sensitivity and the maturity in discourse that we are getting from not only the defense minister but the deputy defense minister in this conversation. There's a trivialization of the experiences and the trauma that people have been subjected to. There's never been any question of absence of respect for the military. In fact, if anything has brought the esteem and respect down, it is these kinds of unfortunate, unlawful adventures into civilian communities and brutalizing them. That is what detracts respect from the institution when they act lawless. Now, it is important, and I recognize that a young man has lost his life in circumstances that we still do not know the full facts of and haven't unraveled. If I was a member of their family, I would be deeply pained that military misconduct has turned attention of the nation away from this critical loss of life, that they have muddied the conversation and forever deprived the community, the family, of the opportunity to truly heal from what has happened to this young individual. So when people misconduct themselves, that is the price we all pay ultimately. At no point has there been a problem in our democracy that our military men have become the subject of widespread onslaught and attacks or across the nation. No. But in every society, crime happens. And when crime happens, it demands that we are level-headed in how we respond and deal with crime in a way to ensure that those criminal conduct do not happen again. The way to go about it is not to take the law into our own hands and brutalize people. So I'm surprised and really shocked that, persons of that caliber would engage in this kind of gaslighting and depreciate the harm and trauma that has happened to all of us.
Now, do you think this is as a result of how we have maybe misunderstood the role of the military in our society and the role of the police? Have we made it clear, that distinction? Do you think the society is well informed as to the duties of each section?
There's a legacy of our past military years that continues to haunt us in many ways that we fail to see or acknowledge. So every day on our streets, for instance, there are certain things that we have normalized because of our coup d'etat past, where it is routine for us to see military people being deployed into communities. We've seen them deployed into high schools. When Somanya community in Somanya was not paying light bills, we sent in the military. When young people were demonstrating in Nigeria, we sent in the military. When somebody lost their phone in the community in Wa, the military goes and brutalizes the community. All these things we look away because they have become, I suppose, a normalized experience for those who were born particularly before the 1992 Constitution. They have accepted that trauma as part of their lives and that military brutality is routine for them. But for young people, most of us who have grown up and lived most of our lives within Ghana's Fourth Republic, we cannot accept to normalize these kinds of things. It cannot be part of our lived reality and our expectations of life in a republic that from time to time, a little voting here, a little corruption here, and a little military brutality there. That cannot be part of our existence as a society. So there's a need for us to audit the ways in which politicians in particular deploy the military with flippancy and with disregard to the role the military is supposed to play in respect of external defense. And understand that the role of domestic law and order belongs exclusively to the police, no longer to the military. I myself have had an experience where I was driving and the military contingent stops me on the road to check my driver's license and road insurance. So today I always remark on the bizarre nature of the military claiming to perform this role in a democracy.
Oliver, you say you were stopped by military personnel wanting to see your driver's license.
Yes, my driver's license and check my roadworthy certificate. And the bizarre nature of it, that these persons will be performing this role, which is something which is the police work. That's something that I continue to live with and remark on its absurdity. And even in terms of policing on our streets, even our policing is somehow militarized. Like I have seen military officers who clad with AK-47s directing traffic in our streets. These things we look upon and walk away from unless we have that general societal audit about the normalization of instruments of violence and incidences of violence, that we reckon with them. We cannot truly recover violence from our democratic experience.
That's quite interesting. I do think further we need to go on several knowledge-sharing expeditions to really clarify the role of the military and further clarify the role of the police. Very interesting account there that you share with us about being stopped by the military to see your driving documentation. But Oliver, you put out a number on your social media handles. You said if you're a victim of the military brutality at Ashaiman or if any family members have been detained, you put out a number there to reach out to your legal team. What exactly is the nature of the help you're offering these people?
So we are grateful, first of all, to the volunteers. We called for 5 human rights volunteers to help assist our team in being able to assess this thing. We've had over 10 responses, and yesterday, while myself and another lawyer were doing the rounds around Burma camp and 7 the military high command with letters and trying to meet with the lawyers and military police, these volunteers were also in the communities, engaging assemblymen, engaging victims, engaging opinion leaders, and able to build a network of people who will continue to provide support there. We're going to continue that work. Our interest is that our conversation is not only tilted to how do we provide to ensure that compensation is given to people, but also how holistic welfare support is provided to these communities. So we are continuing to appeal to persons who, whether live in Ashama or outside of it, who are also victims of this, to reach out to our team on 0303 959 661. 0303 959 661, which is also a WhatsApp number. That when you do reach out to us, we'll be able to document and be able to add you to a class of individuals to whom support is provided for. Whether in terms of assistance to get medical care, for all these individuals to be able to get to the hospital and even to get formal medical reports on this, they have to pay money to do this. These are indigent communities, so a lot of people are unable to afford what they are being asked to do. Our hope is to be able to mobilize that kind of support to be able to assist individuals throughout this process.
Now, that post that you put up, particularly on Twitter, it was met with a lot of reaction, some positive, but I also saw a lot of negative reaction and a lot of naysayers, if you will, saying that this exercise that you're embarking on won't go anywhere. There's a post there by one NKMO says it won't go anywhere. You are wasting your time on this. We will go back to factory settings. Why do you think that's a very popular sentiment, that this action of yours will go nowhere?
When you talk to majority of Ghanaians, perhaps 8 out of 10 people have lost faith in Ghana's ability to provide justice for its citizens. And a lot of people have come convinced that the soul of this nation does not strive towards protecting its citizens and towards empathy and excellence. And so that sort of defeatist reaction, I get it a lot. I read it as persons who are brokenhearted by the experience of living in Ghana. And I've had it several times. When I started representing victims in Nigeria, so many people said the same thing. Now we have ensured for the first time in our democracy that persons who were killed and injured by the military on the demonstrations have all been compensated for. We are continuing to push the case for the state to be interested in prosecuting individuals, and we are doing so. Just a couple of weeks ago, I filed a new right to information request with the Ghana Armed Forces, demanding what has happened to military persons who are involved in this. We continue to push when journalists Caleb Kuda and Zoe Abubaidin were arrested and Caleb was tortured. Over 2 years, this happened. Only recently, the Minister of National Security was fined by the Right Information Commission by our activism. Consistency is what achieves results. So I hear those naysayers, and I know that it's coming from a place of hurt and disappointment with how things work in this country. But for me, it doesn't deter or discourage on the duty to ensure that we do what the right thing is. We all have experiences where we've tried to push and things don't push. But if we stay consistent, rather than give up and throw our hands in the air, we can be able to make a mark, no matter how little. Perhaps we can push and shift the conscience of those we elect more forcefully in the long run. But I know that the way to achieve nothing is to do nothing. And so I'm not going to defer to those who believe that it doesn't serve to fight for rights in this country.
The way to achieve nothing is to do nothing. Oliver, thank you so much for your time this morning and for weighing in on the issues. We're following this one carefully, and we'll keep up with you as you progress as well.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Oliver Barker-Vomawo is a legal practitioner and also the convener of the Fix the Country movement, weighing in on the issues surrounding Ashaiman and that military invasion.
you do take your time. If you say they catch you, I don't worship you. You can no call her.
No be small soldier so hey I shan't be caught.
All right, well, playing you some of the sounds of what happened in Ashaiman in the early hours of a Tuesday. We were just joined by Oliver Bakavomawo, and then he makes mention of the trauma being neglected. Are we really thinking about the citizens who were subjected to the pain, especially when we are met with reactions like, let's have more respect for our uniformed personnel, and it is what it is, soldiers will be soldiers, it's par for the course. Are we relegating the trauma of our fellow Ghanaians to the back? Why are we doing this?
Okay, so I have two comments on this matter. The defense minister must recognize the fact that he is not a soldier. The fact that he is a defense minister does not make him a soldier.
Right.
And he is the interface between civil society and the military. He is a state, he is the president representative on the ground when it comes to the military. The president is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. And so if there are issues that affects the society in terms of civilians, anytime the defense minister speaks, you should know that he's speaking on behalf of the president. And so anything that he says, I take it as a statement from the president, because he's the president representative. The president cannot be everywhere. That's why the president has ministers. And I see him as a young person, relatively young individual. And these are young people who are brutalized by soldiers. And so if he comes and says we should first of all respect their uniform. I mean, you don't say this at times like these.
You're right.
Well,
Cosby, you have that statement there from Amnesty International. Read that for us, and then we'll connect very quickly with Genevieve Partington. She's the Amnesty International director here in Ghana. We'll get her thoughts on that as well.
Right, Helen. So the statement says that Amnesty International Ghana has taken notice of a video recording making rounds on social media and other news outlets of alleged military brutality in Ashaiman following the alleged stabbing and killing of a young soldier, Imoro Sheriff, on Saturday, March 4, 2023. According to media reports, a mandate was issued by the Military High Command to deploy military personnel into Ashaiman to search for the culprits of the crime. Now, this unfortunately led to innocent civilians facing brutality from the military personnel, a series of human rights abuses involving, but not limited to, flogging, restricting free movement of residents, and breaking into people's homes were meted out on persons of Ashaiman constituency. To this effect, innocent people have been hurt, both physically and psychologically, due to the inhumane incident. It says this in no way reflects the mandate of the military, which clearly states that the armed forces shall be equipped and maintained to perform their role of defense of Ghana, as well as such other functions for the development of Ghana as the president may determine. That's according to Article 210, Clause 3. It continues to say that the armed forces regulations Act 1962, Act 105, places obligations on military officers as defenders of the nations. It obliges them not to interfere with the rights of others more than to the extent unavoidable to pursue the legitimate aim they are following. Amnesty International Ghana is against all forms of violence and human rights abuses and condemns the violence meted out by the military to civilians. The military is to take a step back and allow the Ghana Police Service conduct thorough investigations into the unfortunate killing of the soldier. And he says, we would like to respectfully remind the President of Ghana, who is the Commander-in-Chief of the Ghana Armed Forces, the Minister of Interior, the leadership of Ghana Armed Forces, and the authorities involved in law enforcement of Ghana, that under their international human rights obligations, they must promptly, independently, thoroughly, and effectively investigate this unfortunate incident. He ends by saying that Amnesty International Ghana is calling for an independent investigation as a matter of urgency to ensure that the military personnel involved in carrying out human rights abuses against the people of Ashaman are held accountable, and that adequate compensation is given to these victims. And they want to reiterate what the MP for Ashaman said to the people of Ashaman, that all parties should exercise restraint and remain calm while we seek justice.
All right, well, Genevieve Partington is the country director, Amnesty International. She's joined us on the telephone. Genevieve, good morning to you.
Hi, good morning.
How are you doing this morning?
I'm well, I'm good, thank you.
All right, well, we're still dissecting the happenings at Ashaiman, what we're calling the military invasion of Ashaiman. What do you make of this week's happenings?
Yeah, I think, like I said yesterday, I was on air, and I did reiterate that it's a shame, and I think first of all, condolences to the family of the soldier.
Right.
It's a really sad event, and somebody's son unfortunately died, and this is extremely brutal for them as well. Yes, but I think the military high command, they issued a directive, they deployed some soldiers into the area, and I think, they meant well, but the problem with that is that they acted out of their jurisdiction.
Right.
And I think this is where people were hurt, people were flogged. I mean, we've seen some of the videos going around on social media. We've seen people come out, some of the victims come out and, show us on social media what they went through and how they were picked up. And then later on dropped off around 11 p.m. at Ashaiman Junction or something like that. So I think, I hear the military high command they've apologized, they've issued an apology. That's the first step.
Right.
But more needs to be done. And, I'm praying that the Defense and Interior Committee of Parliament do as they said they would do, that they said they are going to visit Ashaiman,
right,
and bring back a report. And I really hope something it will be an independent report, and the right thing needs to be done, like compensation, like for one, the medical bills of all the victims need to be paid off.
Right.
I don't see how your child has been flogged, or your auntie or uncle, and then they're in the hospital and you have to bear those costs. So I think, as Parliament has to definitely, the military has to consider these things in compensating the victims.
Now, you mentioned, you stated in your communique, you say, we would like to respectfully remind the President of Ghana, who is the Commander-in-Chief of the Ghana Armed Forces, the Minister of Interior, the leadership of the Ghana Armed Forces, and other authorities involved in law enforcement in Ghana, that under their international human rights obligations, they must promptly, independently, and thoroughly and effectively investigate this unfortunate incident. Because you mentioned the president here, who we know is the commander-in-chief, are you surprised that he didn't make mention of this incident?
I'm very surprised. I'm very surprised because, I feel as he's a father of this nation. He has kids as well. He is the commander-in-chief of the Ghana Armed Forces. So the least he could have done was, send his condolences to the family and also assure the people of Ghana that, something will be done. And at least, I also condemn what happened. But he has been silent. I don't know. So
we're also seeking answers.
It would be good to hear from them, though.
Yes.
It's not too late.
It's not too late, and we agree with that. I'm also here with my colleagues, Crosby and William, and they too have some questions for you, Genevieve.
Good morning.
Okay. Good morning.
Yeah, I was just finding out, I know it's one of your objectives or functions, if you like, to seek justice for people whose rights are abused. In this instance, do you have any such plans, practically, to maybe help them to seek justice, number one? And number two, how does this affect Ghana's human rights ratings, so far as the Amnesty International is concerned?
Sorry, I didn't hear the first question.
The first question is, I am sure that your organization provides some support for people who suffer human rights abuses to get justice.
Yes.
So
yes.
in this instance, do you have any such plan?
Yes. So what we normally do at Amnesty is, if anyone suffers human rights abuses, you can contact our office. We are based in Accra, Kokomlemle. We have our landline available. You can call. What happens is that we will help you investigate by liaising you with the right people. We have STRAJ. We work with STRAJ a lot. That's the Commission for Human Rights and Administrative Justice. And they are the ones that are supposed to do those kind of investigations. So we will liaise you with someone at STRAJ, and, we can help you go through this. So, yes, that is our mandate. And yes, how it affects us on the international front, it's already, what happened is already on BBC. So, it's not good. It doesn't look good. We've signed so many treaties. We've ratified the African Charter on Human Rights and Human and People's Rights. We are on the Convention Against Torture and Other Cruel, Inhumane, or Degrading Treatment or Punishment, and other conventions. So I think for Ghana, we need to, look out and make sure we are doing the right thing. And where we make mistakes, because people do make mistakes, let's come out and, do the correct thing.
So is Ghana going to suffer any dent in its ratings, so far as Amnesty International is concerned, particularly?
Well, once we've issued a press statement, we've made our position clear that we don't agree with what happened. We condemn the incident that happened. As to the international side, we'll have to wait and see what can happen on that front.
So are you reporting Ghana to the international side of your business?
We've issued a press statement. So yeah. What has happened is that once we've issued a press statement, it's known that this is what has happened. And like I said, it's already on the BBC, so it's not.
So they'll pick it up at the international level?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Genevieve, for the victims in this situation, you've asked that they be compensated. What I'm asking is, what kind or form of compensation are we looking at, and how are they getting it? How does it in any way relieve their pains or, makes them feel any better?
Compensation, they faced some physical and psychological harm. So something like this, you go through this sort of brutality, you're definitely going to have, some form of psychological trauma. So in forms of compensation, I already mentioned their medical bills, for example. And I think if anyone seeks any form of therapy, that also should be passed. And then, yes, I hear the Ashaiman people have come together as a group. I think as a group, they can always say there's power in numbers. So once you've come together as a group, I think the group can be contacted by the authorities and then they can see to them what else they can do for them. Because I hear a number of people are in the hospital, they have fractures and things like that. So I think that is at least the first step in terms of compensation.
Well, Genevieve, thank you so much for your time this morning. Thank you for speaking with us.
Have a lovely day.
You too. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye. Again, Genevieve Partington is the country director, Amnesty International, weighing in on the happenings.
3FM Sunrise.
And we're still taking your reactions. This morning I was asking, what do you make of the decision by government to swoop in next week and have dialogue with the persons in Ashaiman? Time check.
The key to a place we call home. The key to the home where everything comes together. The key to a home that is our own. A home where we make life happen with our families and loved ones.